I mean, the way if you think about it on a game theory level, if everybody is incentivized the same, you don't really have any reason to behave differently. You don't have a purpose to participate in an economy when there's low demand, take more risk, because you'd hold more risk but be rewarded less versus someone who just joins a month later, someone who has more tokens than you. You know, like there's all these other factors that go into this, what we kind of describe as traditional staking. And then when DAFI comes in, it's essentially maximizing rewards for people who care. If you care about an economy and care about a network and you support throughout that adoption phase, you'll be rewarded as that network grows. So it's kind of what we see everything decentralized to go down the path of. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's an ambitious vision for sure. But yeah, we've been around pretty great minds and people who share the same type of philosophy and belief. And I think our community as well, there's always people who kind of believe in what we're doing. And I think we've shown results just on a small level so far, but it's just the beginning. And like the pipeline we've got is absolutely epic. And if people could see like behind the scenes, they'd be so like hyped with DAFI right now. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Andy Boyan. Welcome to Chainlink Live. I'm from Chainlink Labs, and we're here talking to DAFI Protocol. We've got Zain, founder of DAFI. We've already gotten into it and gotten excited. I'm hype already, and I think our community is, and your community is. So glad to see everybody here. I can see your things in the chat, your questions, everyone. So feel free to ask questions. I told Zain earlier, I might geek out about this because I like talking and thinking about incentives and mechanics, but I will get to your questions and bring them up on here maybe a little bit later. But first, Zain, let's get started. Tell us what DAFI is. Give me like the core, principle. What makes it really unique for people who may not have heard of DAFI before?
Yeah. So you can kind of think of DAFI to be changing how any user and every network distributes tokens and rewards users and participants. So that kind of spans everything from staking, nodes, POS, liquidity programs, bounties, social rewards, every type of model of how a user is rewarded. What we're trying to do is reinvent that, and we do so for the user. So people who stay within a system and basically provide, whether it's staking or liquidity or community growth and support, they would essentially be rewarded later rather than earlier. And what that allows you to do as a project, as a network, is essentially enhance your scarcity. You build this demand-pegged inflation, which builds far more robust decentralization. And the people who are long-term on a project are maximizing their incentives because they're, I guess, what we describe as D tokens are increasing over that network growth. So you now have this equilibrium between a network and all participants where those who are short-term and exit have fewer reason to do so. They can't harm the network as easy. They can't pull together network value and harm or essentially be incentivized wrongly, which is what we are trying to counteract. But those who are long-term and keep accumulating, keep providing services to a project and support that, they're essentially rewarded greater. And that's pretty much everything about DAFI.
So, a couple of years ago, there were not nearly as many people in crypto. Like there just weren't that many people who knew about it, who were as involved. And so I feel like for a project to get attention, they thought, oh, well, we've got to incentivize, we got to do an airdrop, or we've got to do something to give our tokens out. And that worked for some people. It didn't for others. And now we've seen kind of a paradigm shift where there's enough people now that just doesn't work as well. And I've seen tons of projects where they try to do this, and then you get a whole bunch of people who are really not invested in a community. So like, has there been a shift? Have you guys noticed this, or has it always been this way?
I mean, if you think about it, in 2017, from first-hand experience, we saw this, and you have networks, you've got this big issue where to stay relevant, to stay exciting, you've got to incentivize your community. Within token allocations, you have specific portions reserved to allocate to incentivize communities. But if you're doing that in a way where you're essentially creating a high volume, a really high reward rate, it's kind of like a desperate approach, and it works. It absolutely works. However, you acquire users and attention at the long-term cost of hyperinflation and devaluation for the network, which is inevitable. Eventually that will happen. It's basic economics. So what if there was a way where you could still attract users, still reward them, but kind of do it in a way where, okay, you don't get your rewards here. If you want to exit, you can, but you don't have much reward quantity. However, if you're really believing in this network to grow, if you're really long-term, whether it's bullish or whether you're a big believer in that project, then as we grow, you grow with us. And that's kind of now how everything should be aligned. It creates an equilibrium between users where right now in models, if you're long-term, you're always at a disadvantage because people on a economic level have no reason to be long-term other than hopium, which is used in crypto quite a lot. So if you can do this on like a game theory level where people are incentivized differently based on smart contracts and market factors that we use to calculate demand, it really is pretty cool.
I mean, and I got to think this impacts founders and early team members as well. If you start a project and everyone gets excited for 2 weeks and then your community just bails on you, or most of your community, then that hopium that you need to inspire, it can be hard to muster, right? You watch a token price go up 1,000% and go down back down where it was. It plays with founders' emotions. I imagine that's hard to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of, whenever we talk to projects, one of the narratives are, if you love your users, don't give them tokens. Simply give them tokens. Do so in a D-token fashion. And yeah, every single project that we've spoken to has that exact same problem. We kind of think of it to be probably the biggest problem that we face in decentralization, because this lacking of factoring demand and adoption in staking or rewards, etc., it leads to very unstable and less adaptive economies. It's one of the reasons why crypto is always, whilst it is a naive market, it's also highly unstable because of reasons like this. So you can create a demand-pegged inflation model for founders and for projects. They're happier because people who don't care about their project aren't going to be rewarded as much. They'll exit early. But yeah, and I think for those who care, like I guess our community and stuff, and other communities, those who are long-term, like they will see that through the model. It's like hardwired, really.
Yeah, absolutely. This makes a ton of sense. I love what we're talking about. Let's get into the sort of the technicals a little bit. So you mentioned super staking at one point, and you talked about D tokens. How is super staking different? Like, what is this sort of mechanic, and how does it work?
Yeah, so super staking is what we describe DAFI to essentially create with D tokens, where you have traditional staking networks issuing out tokens to participants, and that's with POS and pre-staking and all different types of models. Now, if you think of super staking in DAFI to kind of be like the rewards were initially more scarce for everybody globally on the network, and as the network grows and we kind of feed that as a factor, you now connect that supply and demand together, which is missing currently in crypto. And by connecting that supply and demand together, rewards are actually maximized, but for people staying in the system. And that's what super staking is.
Cool. I mean, to give the users a little bit on their side a little bit, there's so much going on in crypto. You have to pick and choose where you're going to give your attention, like where you're going to pay attention, where you're going to contribute and do that. Nobody can do everything anymore. There's just so much available. But that means that if you do give your attention and resources and energy to a project, you should be rewarded, right? Like incentivized. That's what the whole model of Bitcoin and proof of work is based on, is fair incentives. So I've got a couple of questions. That's fantastic. I'm just rolling through and seeing what you guys have to ask here. I'll get to those in just a minute. Actually, Richard has one right here that I'm going to pop up. Zain, if you don't mind, Richard is starting to think about interoperability. So not only do we have incentives on DeFi and Ethereum, but there's across all different sort of layer ones and layer twos. How are you starting to think about other projects and other scaling projects?
I don't really have too much loyalty to Ethereum. So that's step one. I think a lot of projects, they go with what's comfortable or with what's attractive at the time. Initially, we were developing on Ethereum, but it just was unsustainable fees-wise, and it's also quite hard to predict where it will be in a few months from now. So when it comes to interoperability, we're highly chain agnostic, meaning that, for example, our upcoming super staking product launch will be on multiple chains, and over time, we're aggregating more and more. It gives people freedom, one, of liquidity, two, of their own decisions. If they have if they have assets on one specific chain, they should be able to use them there for if they prefer to do so for lower fees or higher scalability. Everyone has their own reasons, and I really think if you force people to go down just one specific path, it's a little bit unfair, and you do definitely, I guess, it's less flexible to the user base.
Yeah, I see you there. That's why, Chainlink is a blockchain agnostic protocol. The teams are making sure that there is a Chainlink implementation across different blockchains so that projects like DAFI can spin up and work wherever they happen to be. Now, DAFI does use Chainlink price feeds as well. Can you talk a little bit about the integration and how you guys are using Chainlink?
Yeah, actually, a little bit about that point that you just made. We were initially developing our last product, which is a smaller product called Simulate. We were doing so on Ethereum, and this is at the point where Ethereum gas prices were going too high, and we then made a switch to Polygon, which was previously called Matic Network. And it was a pretty elegant switch, especially on the Oracle side. Essentially, because Chainlink will write price data on chain, for different assets on different chains, you require different Oracle feeds to do so. But setting these up it was pretty much a frictionless process. And with Chainlink, it's a much deeper relationship with DAFI and Link, because we kind of, if you think about it, we're creating this D token universe. Every single project that will go onto products that we create or integrate D tokens, essentially they'll be powered by these oracles. And it's not as simple as I think some people would think about price feeds and stuff like that. It's much more, okay, some projects would require different types of fees. Some projects are now like exploring social tokens with DAFI, like social followers and community growth as factors to issue rewards and all these other things. And it's a much deeper relationship where working with Chainlink provides that flexibility of creating this really plug and play architecture that is DAFI, where any network, any project can adopt it. And because it's highly chain agnostic, it fits with DAFI's ethos as well. So yeah, it makes it very, very, again, plug and play, but also really frictionless to implement.
So let's say I'm a developer. I'm building a new DApp, a yield aggregator, for example. How do I use DAFI? Is it a plugin? Is there an SDK? Like, how does it work? How do I actually use that sort of model to get involved?
Yeah. So there's two directions you can do so. The simple way is you lock your tokens into a smart contract, one of DAFI's smart contracts, and you would assign a baseline for different demand factors. So for example, you may say Twitter followers, or you may say something more market focused like price and volume. Now, depending on the deviation between the token's current demand and that baseline, you would create this D token equivalent quantity. You then quite simply just distribute these D tokens, and everything else is the same. So for users, it's just one step more. Rather than getting an N token, you get a D token. You can burn this back to that smart contract that minted it and claim the end rewards, which are collateralized, or you can hold on to it. And that's pretty much it. However, what we're working on behind the scenes is pretty cool. We don't talk about it too much, which will accelerate adoption even further. And it's kind of like a platform where people will come onto projects and people will come onto and will specifically work with them. And it won't just be so open source. We'll actually sit down with specific partners, which we've got quite a lot already in the pipeline. And they will essentially be able to offer their tokens in this platform, and all of the contracts, etc., will already be created. And most of it is coming from the super staking product we're launching next month. So yeah, there's two ways. One is very much just lock your tokens in a smart contract. And the second is going through this platform, which gamifies it slightly more, which is we're going to talk more about in the future for sure.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that. Let me just follow the logic, make sure I understand it. So I've got a protocol and I want to do an airdrop of some kind of token distribution to my users. But really, so I just lock those in as collateral, create a synthetic version, that's the D token, and then those get distributed according to smart contract logic. And so you mentioned like exchange volume or token price. What are some other sort of indicators that people can use or triggers to do these distributions, or however you want it to be? Like what are some common interesting ones? That's the interesting mechanism right there, is like, when do you want to set up so the distribution? So instead of an all-in-one, you can do these incremental, but when, according to what?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty cool that we're making it really flexible, because what we've noticed is different projects want different things. And some are just simply price. When we're at $1, we want to have all our rewards distributed. And others are, okay, let's mix it up and create a cocktail of TVL, number of nodes, value of transactions, number of wallet holders, etc. And there's also the third category, which is pretty cool, that I'm a personal fan of, which is a lot more social, where some projects, like mostly NFT and gaming projects, are kind of creating these factors that are community based, like the growth of their community and the number of users in their platform or DApp, and the things like social followers and also the cool community driven factors, which is another way where you're basically saying we're going to distribute the rewards, but we want to do it when we're a bigger community. And when we are a bigger community, we're feeding these factors into the D token. So we're giving you all these D tokens, but if you exit now when we're a small community, you get less rewards. If we're a bigger community in the future, you would get more. And again, it follows the same philosophy that DAFI has, which is pretty cool.
So I can imagine like an NFT project. I think of them, I think people think of them as you get this piece of art and you hang on to it and you don't transact with it, you save it.
Yeah.
But if you're a project that wants to incentivize swapping NFTs and really, transacting among addresses, you could do that, right? You can make that as a metric. Once a certain amount of NFTs have passed a certain amount of hands or wallets or whatever it is, and account for bots and all that sort of stuff, then you can release in some way. So this is exciting, is now we can just invent whatever mechanism we want for sort of different levels of token releases. You can see it in my eyes. It's like, he gets it. It's Johnny. I see the matrix right there.
We notice that a euphoric moment when someone understands it, and I feel like some people kind of underestimate how much possibilities exist with this, because it's essentially bridging your supply to factors, and then factors of what you perceive to be demand. And I think it's just endless possibilities. We're really, really excited.
It's pretty fun. It reminds me of the moment when, you learn about Bitcoin, you're like, okay, I get it. And then you learn about Ethereum and you're like, there's this other level, and that sort of thing is you go down the rabbit hole. At least it did for me, or things like that. So, all right, questions. Let me, hey, everybody. I haven't done an intro in a while, but I'm talking to Zain from DAFI Protocol. My name's Andy Boyan. This is Chainlink Live, and DAFI integrated Chainlink price feeds to get accurate prices for their synthetic D tokens that they're creating with their protocol. We're just talking about different kind of incentive models, how airdrops and some of these DeFi protocols, they've kind of gotten into a rut. They're kind of stuck on a wheel. You launch a token, you have to do it this way because that's the way it's been done before. But DAFI's proposing a new way. And it's a pretty exciting way, as you can tell, because I get excited about things. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them in here. Mark has a question about becoming a blockchain developer, but I'm going to adjust your question a little bit, Mark. Is if people want to get started learning about smart contracts and DAFI and creating tokens, what are some good resources that you and your team have found to really get started down that pathway for somebody just brand new to this? They want to understand smart contracts.
So, to be honest, there's so much. One of the best parts about being such a decentralized open source world is the accessibility to information, and quite literally you can go into GitHub and pass through so much different repositories, or if you want to go on a more earlier level, YouTube is the best place that you can learn that heart surgery on YouTube, like blockchain and smart contracts is without a doubt the information is accessible. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the best place for beginner people to really get into it, but it's without a doubt one of the best skills and pieces of information you can go down the path of, which is understanding the mechanics and architecture of decentralized technologies like blockchain.
Well, along the lines of creating incentives for early communities, it's not just so go, watch some of these videos, do some of these early tutorials, and then join a community. Join the DAFI Protocol Telegram and Discord, and maybe you won't know everything, but to be able to access their GitHub and go through and work with people on these issues. What you see a lot in early crypto communities, it feels like there's thousands and thousands of people who are excited, but then the reality is there's a couple of dozen people who do all the work, maybe sometimes even less. And that's the exact problem that DAFI is trying to solve right here, is we want to incentivize those people to keep working on it. So to whoever that was who asked, let's see, Mark, start with YouTube, start with Chainlink documentation, start with going to hackathons and following those tutorials, and then join a community of a project that excites you. I cannot recommend this enough. Or multiple ones. Join Chainlink Discord, of course, and all that. Zain, you mentioned this platform is coming up. We got super staking in a month or so. You got this kind of self-service model for a platform. What else is on the DAFI roadmap? Get us excited with what you guys have been thinking about mid and long term.
What we're really trying to branch out to is, and we haven't talked about this too much to the community because it's in a development phase, and most of the code would be from super staking. But essentially, it would allow people in the DAFI community to essentially stake DAFI and get D tokens of other projects and other networks. So we'll partner with so many different projects, and we've got a great network, a fantastic network, considering how new DAFI is. And you would essentially stake DAFI for these other flavors of D tokens. And that's really the long-term vision for DAFI. It's like the community has flexibility and they can participate in so much different projects simply through the DAFI token and the model that we'll be creating. That will follow super staking, and we're going down this whole social token reward path, which I think that's the future for DAFI without a doubt. And we've got, even in between these, so these are kind of our two main milestones for products. One we have in June, and the second will be July/August. In between that, there are smaller things. We'll be doing things like incentivizing the community using these D tokens, and we'll also be doing like liquidity programs, but that might be through standard tokens because it's slightly early for that. And yeah, there's a whole range of other stuff where we're going to do for the community, really. It's like everything, really. People don't realize that behind the scenes that every decision is like, okay, how can we make the community happy and develop something that is absolutely awesome? So like we deliver on promises and the roadmap and stuff. That's like everything to us, and I think to any team, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's exciting. People here, Badass here is excited. There we go. We're excited to hear about DAFI staking and the progress you guys are making and have made. I mean, it's clear that you guys have been embedded in this ecosystem. You saw a problem, and this is a unique solution for it. So I'm really happy to talk to you, learn about this. Totally stoked you guys are using Chainlink to accomplish what you need to on the Oracle side of things. Where can the audience follow you? Like where does the core team hang out, and where can people follow and find out more?
Actually, we were just making jokes about being more active on Telegram. What we want to do is have like a few of the communication channels like Discord and stuff we'll be setting up soon. Just because we have a lot of updates that we don't think Telegram is the best place for, like technical and development updates. So we're going to be creating things like that pretty soon, like within the next maybe like a week or so. I think Telegram is a pretty good conversation to be joining, and Twitter as well. The two main platforms are really active on. So yeah, if you want to hear some of the news, which I think you should definitely be excited about, Twitter and our Telegram are both like highly engaging places, really.
You know, what changed the game for me on Twitter is I set notifications. So for those projects I really want to know everything, I set notifications on them and on like some of their founders and things. So you do both and you get like extra bonus information. And then you just scroll down those and you see like who's talking, you get to know projects that way. And that's the difference. Mark, I'm talking to you again, is and whoever else is listening, of course. But that's the difference between like being a passive observer and starting to become a participant and learning the ecosystem and participating. So please do that for DAFI. Join their Telegram and eventually their Discord and technical side. Follow them on Twitter, as well as Chainlink Discord. That's where a lot of our technical discussion happens for hackathons. Many developer problems are solved there. But of course, there's also vibrant Telegram and Twitter. The Chainlink Twitter is nonstop. Zain, it has been an absolute pleasure. I think we're going to wrap things up here. I really want to appreciate you for coming on, taking the time, and telling us all about DAFI.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's a pleasure, and I think the long-term collaboration with Chainlink is going to be one. It's a deeper relationship, so it's one of the ones that we're really excited about. And yeah, I think a lot of amazing stuff to come soon. I mean, to not be hyped would be a silly mistake. It's like an amazing time, really.
I could not agree more. It is time to get excited, and I am. Everybody, thank you for watching and attending Chainlink Live. Be sure to like and subscribe because we're doing these pretty frequently, talking to amazing founders like Zain with fantastic ideas who are using Chainlink to accomplish their needs in DeFi and beyond. Everybody, my name is Andy Boyan. Thank you for being here. This has been Chainlink Live.